Hi everybody, Elke here. I just wanted to jump on. A lot of you have been asking sort of how do you get started? So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. I did a short video about it, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that tonight and just sort of share my tips for how you can get started with writing your book. I sometimes forget that if you're just starting out, you really don't know where to start. And some of the things that I recommend usually might not necessarily work with somebody who is like, doesn't even have a story idea, or maybe they just have a glimmer of an idea or a character and they're just not sure where to go from there. So I'm going to break it down really from the very beginning and share with you some strategies, whether you do have a story idea or you don't have a story idea, and where you can find your idea or how to choose the idea that you have that you want to start with. So the first thing I recommend is to identify what is it that you want to write, if you do know. And even if you don't know, some ways that you can do that is by generating a list of ideas. I always recommend just writing down everything and anything that's ever come to mind, or just do a brainstorming session. Just brainstorm all the ideas that come to your mind. Just make a list. And then while you're doing that is to think about, the knowledge that you have, or maybe that you want to share, that you can share with people that might be interesting. If you're kind of, what do I brainstorm? What do I add? And, think about if you have a message that you want to share, or something that you want that's important to you that you want to tell the world about, or that you're passionate about. These are some of the things that you can include in your brainstorming. And also just thinking about, what ideas and topics that you want to discuss. It could be, politics. It could be everything and anything. It could be, if you're a parent, it could be about parenting. That's the first thing that you can do, is just, get an idea of what you're going to write. And one way to do that is just by brainstorming and writing down everything and anything. Now, the next thing you want to think about is, or you might think about or want to know, is how do you choose from, this list of brainstorms or ideas that you've come up with? And some ways that you can think about, or some things that you can think about when you're choosing, is what idea excites you the most? When you look at the list that you've created, which one makes your heart beat a little faster, or think, yeah, that's, what really excites me or inspires me. It's something that I want to share and tell more about. And I like to ask clients, like, is this something that you think you're going to be excited about in 2 months, 3 months? Because sometimes as creatives, we get ideas all the time if you're one of those people. So, you might be excited in the moment, but is it really going to be something that you're excited about in 2 months? Maybe think about stories that have been percolating in your mind for years, months, weeks, whatever. Something that you feel that is going to stick with you for longer than 2 months. That's what I like to call the honeymoon period when you're writing a book. The next thing you want to think about is, does the idea line up with your goals and your values? Because although it might be an idea, something that you can think about, or that you're passionate about, or maybe not passionate about, but something that you might think, yeah, I could talk about this subject. Does it line up with your values? Because that is going to be important, especially when you get to the point where you start writing about it. And if it's not something that necessarily you may be comfortable with sharing or putting out there in the world because it really doesn't line up with your values, then that is really an important question to ask yourself. Or I should say, if you're at the point where you don't have a story idea and you're thinking about, like, well, I know that I want to write something, but I really don't know, I don't have an idea. And I say this because I met someone in a coffee shop and she's like, I love to write, but I need someone to give me an idea and then I can run with it. And that's fine too. I know a lot of writers that is what gets them writing, is having an idea, right? Or getting an idea from something outside of themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you, if you are one of those persons, places where you can actually find ideas if you're not sure, because it's easy to say, you know, as a writer, ideas are all around you. But when I share these places where you can find them, a lot of times readers will be like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Oh yeah, that is true. So it's just a way to get you thinking about different ways of where to find ideas and thinking about those places to find ideas. I think the first thing to do is just to be open to things that come into your sphere, as I like to call it. Because let's face it, there's usually, like, if you're like me, I like to people watch, and there's usually, you know, someone or something that catches your attention, a conversation, and just, I think, being more open and aware of when you're out and about, I think, is a great way to find ideas. That's the first thing. And this can be online, social media, books, magazines. There's just tons of places to find stuff online and in and around you. You can look at perhaps books, other books, like some of the ideas that I get are from books, documentaries. One of my first stories that I got was a documentary about the children of serial killers, and that sparked an idea for a book. Your past experiences is a good one if you're interested in writing, you know, real life stories, or, you know, you want to make it relatable, or you're looking for something that makes it easy to write because, you know, it's about your past experience, so it makes it easier. And you can also do it by what I mentioned before, is people watching. That is great I do that for dialect, as well as characters. I've gotten characters from that, just watching people and thinking about, you know, where are they coming from? Where are they going? Where could they be going? Where could they be coming from? You know, what's their everyday life like? That is also another great way to get ideas as well as characters. I think the most important thing is just really what I was saying in the beginning, is just to be open and aware of your surroundings and the things that you're coming in contact with that can spark and give you ideas for what you want to write. One important thing I like to get writers to think about when they start thinking about writing a book is to uncover their commitment. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times, you know, we want to write a book, we're excited to write the book, but then we try writing it and it's just not happening because, let's face it, life happens. So what I mean by uncover your commitment is to ask yourself some questions like, why now? Why do I want to write this book now? And sometimes it's a great question to ask because it gets you thinking, is now a good time? Why now? Is it something that's time sensitive? Or is it something that's a story that you know that if you don't tell it now, you're not going to want to tell it later? So that's a really good question to ask yourself. Is now a good time? That is a huge one that I always have clients ask themselves before they think about getting started to write. And the reason why I do that is because, as I mentioned, it's all good and well we say, you know, we're ready to write that story. And the truth is we've got in-laws coming in, you know, it's the holidays. We've got other commitments in our lives that doesn't make it the right time to write. And why that's important is because if you start the story and it's not a good time and life gets in the way, it can be discouraging and make you think that, you know, there's something wrong with you, or I can't write, I'm not a writer. When the truth is, it's just not the right time. And maybe set it aside and say, okay, I know that I have time later in the year or next year or in 3 months. So that's why that's important, so that when you are ready to get started, you are picking the right time. Do you have time to write consistently? This is a huge one. Going back to, is this the right time? Do you have time? Because when you're not able to write consistently, especially in the beginning when you're just getting started, it's easy to get discouraged because you're not being consistent. And it's also difficult to build a habit of writing if you're not able to be consistent, especially in the beginning when you're trying to get started. And that's really important because I think writers get discouraged if they're trying to fit it in a time that's not convenient, and they're not able to write consistently and create a habit and keep those creative juices flowing. So that can really make it difficult to get started as well. Another question to ask is, why do you want to write? And what that looks like is, what is the reason behind the desire? And I think this is important for how to get started, because if you're not aware of why you want to write and why you want to write this book, which is another question, it really makes it difficult to get started and get going. I find that these foundational questions are really important on the how. I know that sounds crazy because a lot of times it's easy to just, I have a story idea or I have a character, I just want to get started. And what happens, and trust me, this was me right in the beginning when I first started writing. And I would start and write the first 3 chapters, and then I couldn't get any further than that. And all of these things that I didn't ask myself really hindered me from getting started, and not just getting started, but being consistent and getting to the end of the book. And that is one of the reasons why I say it's so important to build that foundation when you're saying, how do I get started? And this is some of those important foundational steps that I really recommend. Why do you want to write? What is the reason behind the desire? Why this book, if you have one, your idea, and why now? Why do you want to write this book now? So those are some of the questions to ask yourself. Those are questions, really important questions to ask yourself before getting started, or to help you to get started. Another important question I think is key is, what stopped you in the past? If you have tried to start before and you kind of didn't move forward or didn't get to the point where you wanted to, and you got, discouraged, or you just keep starting and stopping, what keeps stopping you? What stopped you those times that you started to get going? And why this is an important question to ask yourself is because a lot of times if we don't ask ourselves that questions, we're running into those same roadblocks. However, if we can just, identify, hey, what stopped me? Was it time? Was it, I didn't have a writing routine? Was it just fear? Was it, doubt? Was it that I just felt like I didn't have the skills to write? When we identify those, then it's easy to just sort of say, oh, this is what stopped me, and look at it feasibly and say, okay, what can I do now to help me get started and be consistent? Because if it is that, you have fear around writing the book or the story, then you know that, okay, I can find books, courses, everything that I need about mindset and improve my mindset, so that this is something that I can do to move forward, so it doesn't hinder me. The other thing is, if it's just that you just don't have confidence in your writing skills, or in your ability to be able to tell the story or do it justice, you can learn to be a better writer. That could look like reading more books about the craft of writing, taking online courses. And these are some of the things, like I said, are really part of that foundation of helping you to get started and how to do it. So that, I think, is another important step or question to ask yourself as well. You have any questions that you want to ask about that I haven't covered about how to get started writing your book, please share them in the comments and I will be happy to answer them for you. If you'd like to you're ready to take that next step, or you want to sort of dive into some of the things that I covered a little bit more, I want to invite you to download my Ultimate Checklist Bundle, which includes a variety of different checklists, and they walk you through, I call it a checklist, but it's a little bit more than that. It really guides you through different questions. Ask yourself some of the ones that I've mentioned here, and it really dives a lot deeper, so that it helps you to kind of set you up to get started if you're not sure how. And it takes you through the process of, outlining what things to include, actually writing the book and editing. So it really is, I call it the Ultimate Checklist Bundle, because it helps you get from start to first edited draft, and it gives you those checklists to help you along the way. So if you're just getting started or you're just looking for a little bit of help, I want to encourage you to download that. I'll leave the link in the comments, and thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.